Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, silent, biological shift that happens the moment you hit age 70. And look, this isn't guesswork. We're talking about over 4,500 pages of hardcore longevity tracking data from the Baltimore Longitudinal Study of Aging and the UK Biobank. We're going to map out exactly how your biology basically rewires itself at the dawn of your seventh decade, and, more importantly, how you can keep your absolute physical independence. Let's start with a guy named Walter. At 70, he was incredibly active, hiking steep trails, chasing grandkids, completely independent. But just 3 years later, he needed his family's help just to put on a shirt or step into his pants. When researchers asked him about this brutal decline, what he said was just heartbreaking. "I wish someone had told me this would happen. I would have done things completely differently." The crazy thing is, Walter didn't have a stroke, and he didn't have some tragic accident. He lost his autonomy in 3 short years simply because he ignored the silent warning signs that we're about to unpack today. Here's the thing you absolutely need to understand. Crossing that 70-year threshold, it literally changes the fundamental rules of human survival. You might go for daily walks, eat your veggies, and sit there thinking, "Hey, I feel perfectly fine today." Well, that's exactly what Walter thought. But biology is unforgiving. Just because you feel fine right now doesn't mean you're protected from the shifts coming your way. They're hardwired into our cells, and quite frankly, they do not care about your casual good habits.
All right, let's get right into the first major shift, the vestibular degradation protocol.
This one doesn't announce itself with a sudden dizzy spell. Actually, right this second, entirely out of sight, your vestibular system is quietly breaking down. See, deep inside your inner ear, you've got these microscopic canals filled with a fluid called endolymph. Normally, it's thin, watery, and highly responsive. But once we cross 70, this fluid physically thickens up. It turns into this sluggish, industrial sludge, and the tiny hair sensors in there start to wither and die. It's kind of like a highly precise airplane gyroscope getting filled with thick oil. The instruments start lagging, and it totally distorts your brain's sense of space. Now, you might not even notice it during the day because your eyes act as a visual anchor, but picture this. You wake up at 2 a.m. to use the restroom. It's pitch black, and those visual anchors are gone. Suddenly, your brain has to rely entirely on that failing inner ear gyroscope, and man, that is exactly when catastrophic falls happen.
Moving right along to number 2, sarcopenic architecture collapse.
So right as your balance is fading, you're also dealing with a rapid, targeted destruction of your type 2 fast-twitch muscle fibers. These are the explosive muscle cells you absolutely need to catch yourself when you trip on a sidewalk. And it's incredibly deceptive. You could step on the scale tomorrow morning and see the exact same weight you saw 5 years ago. But under the skin, if you aren't fighting back, your body starts a process called myosteatosis. Basically, healthy muscle is systematically swapped out for metabolic fat and tough scar tissue. Plus, down at the cellular level, your mitochondria become super inefficient. They start leaking reactive oxygen species, which damages the surrounding muscle even more. Your muscles are literally hollowing out from the inside.
Think of your skeleton and muscles like a massive skyscraper. As we age, hormonal shifts and chronic inflammation, what we call inflammaging, act like acid on the building's heavy steel support beams. The strong scaffolding literally pulls away from the bone. This is exactly why doing something normal, like getting out of a low car seat or hoisting a bag into an overhead bin, suddenly makes your limbs feel incredibly heavy. Your structural integrity has fundamentally shifted.
Real quick, before we unpack the third shift, I want to ask you to hit that subscribe button. And please, don't view this as just another generic internet plug. The current medical system is completely reactive. They're only set up to manage you after you've already broken a hip. By subscribing, you're helping us push this vital preventative explainer to thousands of other people who are walking blindly into a health crisis.
let's change this reactive narrative together, okay? All right, back to it. Number 3, microvascular rarefication. This third transformation happens deep inside your brain. Basically, your critical night shift workers just walk off the job, which leads to a severe shrinking of your microscopic blood vessels. And the oxygen disparity here is just wild to think about. Your brain is so demanding. It only makes up about 2% of your body weight, but it hogs over 20% of your total oxygen and glucose. To keep up with that massive demand, it relies on this incredibly dense web of microscopic capillaries to feed the deepest parts of your brain, like the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus.
But here's the problem. As we age, those tiny pipelines start to narrow and just wither away. It's a lot like an old city water system losing pressure over the decades until the houses at the very end of the street go totally dry. When this happens in your head, the brain tissue physically starves and shrinks. So this structural starvation, which, by the way, isn't necessarily the onset of Alzheimer's, is exactly why folks over 70 suddenly struggle to find the right words, lose their keys, or hit a wall of severe afternoon brain fog. The brain cells are literally gasping for air.
That brings us to number 4, skeletal matrix porosity.
According to data from Stanford Medicine, once you hit 70, the delicate balance between building new bone and breaking down old bone totally falls apart. Bone remodeling slows to an absolute crawl. Your bones transform from being like flexible, resilient green branches that can absorb an impact into dry, brittle wood that can snap under the slightest twist. And at the exact same time, the cartilage pads in your joints lose their water-binding properties. They dry out, basically looking like a kitchen sponge left baking in the desert sun. Because of this, every step you take sends harsh microshocks straight into unprotected bone. Your body tries to fix this by growing tiny, jagged bone spurs, which causes chronic pain. You end up adopting this shorter, guarded walking stride to protect your aching knees, which completely ruins your balance and feeds right back into those first 2 degrading shifts we talked about. And finally, number 5. Glymphatic cleansing deficit. This one is absolutely the most insidious biological shift on the list. Honestly, it's the ultimate pivot point between spending your later years in a nursing facility or keeping your absolute personal freedom. It's all about the total collapse of your glymphatic system. Neuroscientists discovered this fairly recently. It's basically your brain's internal plumbing network. During the deepest stages of slow-wave sleep, your brain cells do something absolutely incredible. They physically shrink by up to 60%. This opens up space, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to rush through the tissue like a high-pressure dishwasher, flushing out toxic metabolic debris, beta-amyloid plaques, and all the junk that builds up during the day. But here is the truly terrifying reality we're seeing in the tracking data. After age 70, the amount of slow-wave deep sleep you get drops by a staggering 80%. Let that sink in. The night shift cleaning crew just stops showing up. The dishwasher stops running, so all that toxic metabolic waste just sits there, trapped inside your neural pathways. And when this system fails, the garbage buildup actually damages your motor cortex. That's a specific part of your brain that tells your muscles to move. Your brain's command center is trying to shout instructions through a thick wall of cellular trash, so the signals arrive delayed and weak. This disconnect is exactly what leads to that sudden, profound physical frailty.
Okay, so how do we fight back? Let's dive into the resiliency protocol.
Listen to me very carefully. We absolutely do not have to accept a passive surrender here. When Walter first arrived at the clinic, he really thought his expiration date was up, but he was wrong. Using basic principles of targeted human physiology, Walter took his life back. In just 6 months of consistent work, he went from needing help getting dressed to walking 2 miles completely unaided.
You can enforce the exact same turnaround with this blueprint. First, we tackle the balance and muscle decay with the Neurobalance Challenge. Every single morning and evening while you're brushing your teeth, stand entirely on one foot. Try closing your eyes for short bursts. This takes away your visual safety net and forcefully recalibrates that sluggish inner ear fluid we talked about earlier. Second, you have to enact the anabolic override. Because older bodies resist building muscle, you need to consume exactly 30 to 40 grams of clean, leucine-rich protein early in the day, right at your first meal. Just casually grazing won't trigger the cellular alarm bells you need to repair your muscles and protect your structural frame. Next up, before your feet even touch the floor in the morning, spend just 2 minutes manually pumping fluid back into your joints. Do some full-range ankle circles and pull your knees to your chest. You want to prehydrate that dried-out cartilage matrix like you're wetting a dry sponge. Then, at the end of the day, we have to rescue your glymphatic system with the slow wave extension. You need to create a strict sleep sanctuary. That means absolutely no blue light 90 minutes before bed and dropping your room temperature down to somewhere between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Emulating the body's natural nighttime temperature drop is absolutely critical to preserving whatever fragments of deep sleep you have left so that high-pressure dishwasher can actually run.
Finally, let's lock in your stability with the morning Synergy protocol. Right when you wake up, drink 16 ounces of pure water mixed with just a pinch of mineral salt. Then, step straight outside into natural sunlight and spend 5 minutes doing continuous dynamic head-turning movements while briskly walking in place. I know it sounds a bit intense, but by combining instant cellular hydration with aggressive head movements, you physically slosh around that thickened endolymph fluid. This dual action rewires your brain's spatial awareness centers way faster than passive exercise, basically jolting your central nervous system awake to actively protect you against falls.
Look, aging might be a mathematical certainty, but physical and mental decay, that is highly negotiable. We're actively building a global community dedicated to keeping our independence for the long haul. So let's establish our baseline right now. Head down to the comments below and tell me 2 things based on what we've learned: your exact age and the precise number of seconds you can currently stand on one foot with your eyes totally closed without reaching out for support. Let's ruthlessly protect our physical longevity together. So, how long can you stand? See you in the next explainer.